Jesus Christ. And I'd like to welcome you at this moment to this live broadcast of the celebration of the Passion of the Lord. It will be presided over by His Holiness Pope Francis here in St. Peter's Basilica. And today's liturgy is part of the Easter or Paschal Triduum. The Triduum begins with the celebration of the Mass of the Lord's Supper on Holy Thursday and concludes with evening prayer on Easter Sunday. On behalf of Vatican Media, I'd like to welcome all of you who are joining us for this moment of prayer today on this most holy of days, especially to all of you joining through the various Vatican News channels, through the Vatican News or Vatican Radio app, the Vatican News English web portal, our Facebook Live, or our YouTube accounts, and many of you tuning in through our media partners, through television stations making this broadcast possible. Welcome to those of you tuning in through Catholic TV, Catholic Faith Network, Shalom World Television Networks, EWTN, Salt and Light Media, Sunday Shalom at Madarshan TV, Uganda Catholic Television, Shalom TV India. We also have some tuning in through radio. Welcome to those of you tuning in through Luminous Radio, as well as to the many other diocesan or local radio stations who may be picking up this broadcast or our shortwave radio. And to those of you who may be finding us on other internet platforms. I'm Sister Bernadette, and I'll be providing the English language texts and translations today. Pope Francis celebrated the Holy Thursday Mass of the Lord's Supper, thus opening the Easter Triduum. He did so yesterday at the same venue he chose to celebrate his first Holy Thursday Mass after becoming Pope 10 years ago, at Rome's Casal del Marmo Juvenile Penitentiary. We now see the Holy Father coming in with the other ministers. He is in a wheelchair. Our Holy Father will be presiding over today's celebration of the Lord's Passion. We will not begin today's liturgy with the sign of the cross because it is a continuation of the Holy Thursday Mass of the Lord's Supper. There will be no customary penitential rite or the liturgy of the Eucharist. Instead of the prostration that normally accompanies the Holy Father in his wheelchair before the high altar, which is stripped, no candles today. We too prepare our hearts in this liturgy to recall the moment, the day of Christ's death, which would have been the 14th day of Nisan. It was a day of mourning, or Holy Friday. Good Friday has traditionally then become a day of mourning, accompanied by fasting. And today's liturgy will help us enter more concretely into the mystery we are celebrating. Each liturgy is meant to be a memorial, and today we remember the salvific act of Jesus, the center of our Christian faith. We recall the mighty works that God has wrought for us in every liturgy. Today we're invited then to fix our eyes on Jesus, our crucified Lord, whom we will see triumphantly entering during the veneration of the cross. Under the shadows of Good Friday, each one of us can place ourselves before that cross and evaluate ourselves before our model with our own problems, our own tragedies, our own sufferings. And all of us can ask for his enlightenment. We now prepare ourselves for the first part of the liturgy of the Word.
Reminisce la miserazione tuarum, Domine, et famulos tuos, eterna protezione santifica per cuius Christus, Filius tuus, per suum gloriam instruitus Paschale Mysterium, qui vit regnat in saecula saeculorum.
Amen. Remember your mercies, O Lord, and with your eternal protection, sanctify your servants, for whom Christ your Son, by the shedding of his blood, established the Paschal mystery. Our first reading from the book of the prophet Isaiah.
Ecco, il mio servo avrà successo, sarà onorato, esaltato e innalzato grandemente.
See, my servant will prosper. He shall be lifted up, exalted, rise to great heights. As the crowds were appalled on seeing him, so disfigured did he look that he seemed no longer human. So will the crowds be astonished at him, and kings will stand speechless before him.
E comprenderanno ciò che mai avevano udito.
For they shall see something never told, and witness something never heard before. Who could believe what we have heard, and to whom has the power of the Lord been revealed? Like a sapling, he grew up in front of us, like a root in arid ground. Without beauty, without majesty, we saw him to attract our eyes, a thing despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and familiar with suffering, a man to make people screen their faces. He was despised, and we took no account of him.
Egli si è caricato dalle nostre sofferenze. Si è addossato i nostri dolori.
And yet, ours were the sufferings he bore, ours the sorrows he carried, but we thought of him as someone punished, struck by God and brought low, yet he was pierced for our faults, crushed for our sins. On him lies a punishment that brings us peace, and through his wounds we are healed. We had all gone astray like sheep, each taking his own way.
Il Signore fece ricadere su di lui l'iniquità.
And the Lord burdened him with the sins of us all. Harshly dealt with, he bore it humbly. He never opened his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughterhouse, like a sheep that is dumb before its shearers, never opening its mouth.
Con oppressione e ingiusta sentenza fu tolto di mezzo. Chi si affligge per la sua posterità?
By force and by law he was taken. Would anyone plead his cause? Yes, he was torn away from the land of the living for our faults, struck down in death. They gave him a grave with the wicked, a tomb with the rich. Though he had done no wrong, and there had been no perjury in his mouth.
Ma al Signore è piaciuto prostrarlo con dolori. Quando offrirà se stesso in sacrificio di riparazione, vedrà una discendenza. Vivrà a lungo.
The Lord has been pleased to crush him with suffering. If he offers his life in atonement, he shall see his heirs. He shall have a long life, and through him what the Lord wishes will be done. His soul's anguish over, he shall see the light and be content. By his sufferings shall my servant justify many, taking their faults on himself. Hence, I will grant whole hordes for his tribute. He shall divide the spoil with the mighty for surrendering himself to death and letting himself be taken for a sinner, while he was bearing the faults of many and praying all the time for sinners. And at this time, I'd also like to welcome anyone who may be joining us through the channels picking up the worldwide telecast.
Padre, nelle tue mani consegno il mio spirito.
Father, into your hands I commend my spirit.
In te, Signore, mi sono rifugiato, mai sarò deluso. Difendimi per la tua giustizia, alle tue mani affido.
In you, O Lord, I take refuge. Let me never be put to shame. In your justice set me free. Into your hands I commend my spirit. It is you who will redeem me, Lord.
Sono il rifiuto dei miei nemici e persino dei miei vicini, il terrore dei miei conoscenti. Chi mi vede per strada mi sfugge.
In the face of all my foes, I am a reproach, an object of scorn to my neighbors and of fear to my friends. Those who see me in the street run far away from me. I am like a dead man, forgotten in men's hearts, like a thing thrown away.
Ma io confido in te, Signore. Dico, tu sei il mio Dio, i miei giorni sono nelle tue mani.
But as for me, I trust in you, Lord. I say, you are my God. My life is in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of those who hate me.
Sul tuo servo fa splendere il tuo volto, salvami per la tua misericordia. Siate forti, rendete saldo il vostro.
Let your face shine on your servant. Save me in your love. Be strong. Let your heart take courage, all who hope in the Lord.
A reading from the letter to the Hebrews. Brothers and sisters, since in Jesus, the Son of God, we have the supreme high priest who has gone through to the highest heaven, we must never let go of the faith that we have professed. For it is not as if we had a high priest who was incapable of feeling our weaknesses with us, but we have one who has been tempted in every way that we are, though he is without sin. Let us be confident then, in approaching the throne of grace, that we shall have mercy from him and find grace when we are in need of help. During his life on earth, he offered up prayer and entreaty, aloud and in silent tears, to the one who had the power to save him out of death. And he submitted so humbly that his prayer was heard. Although he was Son, he learnt to obey through suffering. But having been made perfect, he became, for all who obey him, the source of eternal salvation.
And prior now to the reading of the Passion, we have a gradual. We prepare our hearts to hear the proclamation of the Passion according to St. John through these words of Paul to the Philippians. Christ was humbler yet, even to accepting death on a cross. But God raised him high and gave him the name which is above all names.
Passio Domini nostri Iesu Christi, secundum Ioanne. In illo tempore, egressus est Iesus cum discipulis suis, transtorrentem cedrom, ubi erat ortus, inquem introibit, ipse et discipuli eius.
Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. There was a garden there, and he went into it with his disciples. Judas the traitor knew the place well, since Jesus had often met his disciples there. And Judas brought the cohort to this place, together with a detachment of guards sent by the chief priests and the Pharisees, all with lanterns and torches and weapons. Knowing everything that was going to happen to him, Jesus then came forward and said, "Who are you looking for?" They answered, "Jesus the Nazarene." And he said, "I am he." Now Judas the traitor was standing among them. When Jesus said, "I am he," they moved back and fell to the ground. Jesus asked them a second time, "Who are you looking for?" And they said, Jesus replied, "I have told you that I am he. If I am the one you are looking for, let these others go." This was to fulfill the words he had spoken. "Not one of those you gave me have I lost." Simon Peter, who carried a sword, drew it and wounded the high priest's servant, cutting off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. Jesus said to Peter,
"Mite gladium in vaginam, calicem quem dedit mihi pater."
"Put your sword back in its scabbard. Am I not to drink the cup that the Father has given me?"
Cors ergo et tribunus et ministri Judeorum comprenderunt Iesum et ligaverunt eum et adduxerunt ad annam primum erat enim socer Caife
The cohort and its captain and the Jewish guards seized Jesus and bound him. They took him first to Annas, because Annas was the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was high priest that year. It was Caiaphas who had suggested to the Jews, "It is better for one man to die for the people."
Et alius discipulus autem illerat notus pontifici.
Simon Peter with another disciple followed Jesus. This disciple, who was known to the high priest, went with Jesus into the high priest's palace, but Peter stayed outside. So the other disciple, the one known to the high priest, went out, spoke to the woman who was keeping the door, and brought Peter in.
Et dixit hostiarie, et introduxit Petro. Dicit ergo Petro ancilla.
The maid on duty at the door said to Peter,
Num quid tu, es discipulis es hominis istius.
"Aren't you another of that man's disciples?"
Dicit ille.
He answered,
Non sum.
"I am not."
Autem servi et ministri, qui prunas fecerant, quia frigus erat, et cale faciebant se. Erat autem cum eis et Petrus, stanset cale.
Now it was cold, and the servants and guards had lit a charcoal fire and were standing there warming themselves. So Peter stood there too, warming himself with the others. The high priest questioned Jesus about his disciples and his teaching. Jesus answered,
Ego palam locutus sum mundo, ego semper docui in synagoga et in templo, quo omnes Judei convenium.
I have spoken openly for all the world to hear. I have always taught in the synagogue and in the temple, where all the Jews meet. I have said nothing in secret. But why ask me? Ask my hearers what I taught. They know what I said.
Ec autem cum dixisset, onus assistens ministrorum dedit.
At these words, one of the guards standing by gave Jesus a slap on the face, saying, "Is that the way to answer the high priest?" Jesus replied,
Testimonium peribede malo.
"If there is something wrong in what I said, point it out. But if there is no offense in it, why did you strike me?"
Misit ergo eum annas ligatum ad Caefam pontifice.
Then Annas sent him still bound to Caiaphas, the high priest.
Stanset cale faciens.
As Simon Peter stood there warming himself, someone said to him,